Hello friends, I hope that you've been well. In today's video, I am going to be doing a real-time painting video with a Q&A voiceover. If you've been with my channel for a while, this is a series that I've been doing for quite a while, and basically what I do is I just show real-time footage of a painting or drawing process. It is edited to a degree because otherwise this video would be extra long, and there's many instances where my head is in the shot or I'm just sitting there not actually painting but just contemplating my next move. But all of the footage that you do see is in real time. And then over on my YouTube community tab, as well as my Instagram stories, I asked for you to give me questions to answer for this voiceover. So the way that I structure these questions is I do questions based around art and career. And then in the middle, I kind of compile life and miscellaneous questions, and then at the end we'll do fun questions about fandom, music, etc. But before we get into the questions, I do want to talk a little bit about the illustration that I'm working on here. So on my Patreon page, I have a monthly print and sticker club, and last month's theme I did Luna, which is this moon goddess that I've illustrated a few times. And so for this month, for the month of April, I wanted to do a companion of Sol, which is the sun goddess. I've illustrated these characters before. They're just of my own design based on, the moon and the sun. And so the illustration that you see me working on is the print reward for this month. And you do have until April 30th. I know I'm cutting it really close to sign up if you're interested in receiving the print and or sticker. The sticker design turned out really cute, and they have these little gold accents. And when you place the moon goddess and the sun goddess next to each other, they're sort of facing each other. I really like doing these kinds of sets where they feel like they could be cohesive with one another. And because this voiceover is just going to be answering questions, I'm not actually going to talk much about the process of the illustration. If you're interested in that, I have real-time narrated acrylic gouache portrait videos on my channel and on my Patreon if you want to know more about the actual process of my painting. And on my Patreon, I also have a podcast and a huge backlog of videos if you're not interested in physical rewards. And yeah, anyway, so enough about me plugging myself. I will go ahead and finally answer these questions now. So first question is, what are some tools that you think are really good for traditional artists who are just starting to sell their work to invest in early? So I would say definitely a scanner. That is going to be pretty crucial if you are looking to sell traditional artwork. And the thing about what types of art materials, that is going to be entirely up to you, because when it comes to reproduction, when you're making prints, that can be really any medium. That's going to be up to you because of the fact that it's going to be a print. But if you are thinking about selling the original artwork, that's when art materials will come into play. Higher quality art materials that are going to be long lasting. Certain materials like alcohol markers, they will fade over time, or like cheaper pigments in certain paints, like cheaper paints, they again will fade over time. But when it comes to actually scanning and making them into prints, that element isn't really important. So it just depends on what you're looking to do. I would really like to start painting with gouache, but I'm not sure where art supplies I should buy to start. I don't want to break the bank, but I want to have everything I need. What do you suggest? I guess the first thing you want to determine is if you want to get regular gouache or acrylic gouache, because they are different from each other, and you can't really, I wouldn't recommend mixing them directly with each other. This illustration, actually, I am using mainly acrylic gouache, but then you'll see in the black background, that's actually regular gouache, but I'm using it on its own. I'm not mixing it directly with the acrylic gouache. So yeah, determine which you would want to try out. I really like both, but everyone's preference is going to be different. So definitely do your research and look into other artists and what kind of paints might make more sense for you. And then after you decipher which type of gouache you want to get, if you want to be cost effective, buy a number of individual tubes, I would say, as opposed to buying a humongous set. That way you can get slightly nicer paints, but fewer tubes. I think the quality over quantity will be really beneficial, especially if you're new to the medium and you're not sure if this is something that you for sure want to invest a ton of money into. And then with paper, I would say gouache is pretty versatile in the sense that it doesn't need a super heavy paper in the same way that watercolor does, but you do want something a little bit heavier weight. So even a mixed media paper or some kind of watercolor paper would be good for gouache. And then paintbrushes, I find you really don't need super expensive ones. I use fairly kind of middle of the road synthetic paintbrushes, and then a palette. But even a palette, like you could get away with just using a plate or, you know, something that you have lying around your house. Honestly, like you really don't need that much to get started. Your art is amazing. Thank you so much. You use so many good colors, but are there any colors in art you don't like, or a color scheme that doesn't ever work out? I don't know if there is anything that I for sure would never do or explore. I guess for me, I don't tend to go for super muddy or muted color palettes or grayscale. These are things that I have done at some point or another, but it's not the types of palettes that I typically go for. If you're familiar with my work, and as you'll see with this particular illustration especially, I really love color and I really love vibrant colors. So anything that is really, really muted or earthy is not something I often go for, but I mean, never say never. It's I'm open to lots of different explorations. How many hours do you draw daily? Even your sketches look very nice. Well, thank you for saying that. This is a tricky question, and it is something that I get often because the amount of art that the amount of time I spend doing art or drawing is different every day, and I don't even necessarily draw or make art every day. There's going to be days like today where I'm only doing video stuff or emails and things like that, so I actually probably won't get around to doing any art today. That being said, in terms of my sketches looking nice, something that is really important to remember is that people are only posting what they want you to see online. So when I post my sketches on the internet, I'm only posting them because I like them. I'm not going to be posting my really ugly sketches or illustrations that I'm really unhappy with. So that's something to be mindful of with social media, is that people are typically only presenting the best of what they can offer. So just keep that in mind when you feel discouraged about sketches or something that you are unhappy with. Do you have any advice for warming up before tackling a new piece? Also, how do you usually overcome the anxiety/intimidation of starting a new piece? For me, let's see. So actually this is a good example, this illustration that you're watching here, because I came back from a 2-week vacation in Japan, which I will have Japan content for you, don't worry. So during that trip, I did no drawing whatsoever, and I knew that I needed to work on this illustration for my Patreon page. And so, yes, it did feel a little intimidating to jump directly into an illustration like this. And in the past, I often would do that. And I always found that the learning curve at the beginning was always so challenging because I was so rusty. So I definitely do think that warming up and easing yourself into bigger illustrations is a good idea. So before working on this illustration and after I came back from my trip, I did just some like studies and sketches in my sketchbook. And I think things that just don't feel like they have as much pressure on them and don't feel nearly as involved, just to like warm yourself back up into art making is my mode of operation lately. And I think that really helps in when you jump into the final illustration, it doesn't feel nearly as intimidating. I love your art so much, but sometimes I wonder if there's anything you can't draw. So my only question is, what is one thing or a few things you struggle with drawing or mediums you find difficult to use? There are so many things that I find challenging to draw or paint or illustrate. I am pretty limited, I guess, in terms of, or maybe limited is not the right word. I'm very concentrated in what I include in my work. It's very character based. I do want to expand into other things, but I've always been drawn to people and portraits. I would say that the most difficult for me is man-made objects that are really complicated. So like a car or buildings, environments, like things that are man-made, I think are more challenging because it's more difficult to get them right. Like if you get the proportions of a car incorrectly, it's more obvious that it's wrong, as opposed to like a plant or anything in nature. I think that it's a lot easier to get away with it being slightly wrong, if that makes sense. And then mediums you find difficult to use. Anything 3D I find really challenging. So anything that has to do with a 3D space as opposed to a 2D one is really challenging for me. It's not something that I'm as familiar with in the first place, but every time I do something 3D, it's always a challenge for me. Have you considered getting more into 3D art like plush making or pottery? So the closest thing I have had is I did buy a ton of polymer clay, and I have a video on it on my YouTube channel where I had made a few earrings with polymer clay, and this was something that I had intended to try and turn into like a side business or like something that to add to my repertoire of things, but I have yet to approach it again. And I bought all of these tools and I have a bunch of polymer clay that I haven't touched, but like I said, there's something about 3D art making and more crafty stuff that I find really challenging. So I have yet to make any more earrings since making that video, but hopefully I can get around to it again. If not, I might have to consider like selling all that stuff, just because it seems like such a waste to have it just sit in my closet and not get used. So we'll see. And then plush making, I have no interest in physically making plushes myself. I think that would be really challenging. I've never been really inclined to sew or to have a sewing machine or anything like that. I did very briefly try to launch plushies with Makeship. I had made a plushie with them. They manufactured it though. I just provided the design. Unfortunately, it didn't get funded, but that was like the closest thing, and it didn't get funded. And I think that because I'm a character-based, like people-based person, I think that a plushie is a bit harder of a sell. I think if I were to do something else in that realm, like toys or merchy stuff, I think that like a standee would make more sense for my style. But anyway, never say never, who knows? But in this moment in time, that's a door that I've closed for now. Would you change anything about your art style? And if so, what would it be / what's a thing you want to improve? Your style is stunning, by the way. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've talked about this on my channel like in various videos, but I've actually been pretty dissatisfied with my work overall the past couple of years. And I think a lot of that has to do with juggling YouTube and Patreon and just like all the extra responsibilities that comes with being a full-time artist. And so I feel like I'm often rushing to the next deadline as opposed to really being able to take my time with each and every illustration that I do. And so I've been working towards that. I've been trying to find a balance, and I think I'm slowly getting there. But if I would have like a tangible thing about my work to change or improve on, or something that I'm like, that's a goal, is trying to make my pieces feel a little bit more dynamic or feel a little bit more alive, if that makes sense, more lively. I feel like a lot of my work is quite stiff and a little bit too polished sometimes. And I think that the beauty of traditional art, which is primarily the type of artist that I am, is when you can see brush strokes, or we can tell like when it just feels lived in, when it feels handmade. So I'm trying to strike a balance between my really clean kind of aesthetic with something that just feels more raw, if that makes sense. So anyways, art is definitely an ongoing lifelong journey. So I'm working on it. I'm 13 and I've been trying to become good at painting, but it's kind of hard to stay consistent. How do you keep improving your art? So honestly, you're 13. I would say don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just keep it fun. And, just if you just keep making artwork and you enjoy the process of it and explore, experiment, and, eventually you will improve. And the thing is, I think that social media and seeing how artists can be full-time, it's great because it has opened up, the options for careers in the artist realm. But I do think that it gives this sense of urgency to people that they constantly need to compete with each other and be amazing right away, and creates like this want for instant gratification. So try and, be patient, keep practicing, keep experimenting, but ultimately have fun with it, and don't be afraid of failure. And remember that growth is not linear. You're always going to have ups and downs no matter how long you've been painting. So I'm rooting for you, and I'm sure that if you put in the work and you make those efforts, you will see results. What do you feel while creating art? This is a really interesting question because I don't think I've ever had someone ask me this before. And it's not something that I ever think about when I'm painting, when I'm drawing. The emotions it's usually a journey, I feel like. So there are definitely going to be instances in the art making process where I'm really frustrated or I'm nervous because, if I make the wrong line, it'll really ruin the piece. And then there's definitely cases where obviously I'm having fun, where I just get lost in the colors and the blending. And, there's cases where it feels very therapeutic and methodical. And so sometimes there's joy, sometimes there's frustration. It really just depends on which part of the process or how things in my life are also going. There's definitely going to be cases where I'm like not in a great mood, but I'm like, I have to make this thing for this deadline or whatever. And, maybe I'm going through some personal stuff. And so I'm miserable, but I still need to make art anyway. When you were younger, was art something you saw yourself doing? Like I was mentioning earlier, when I was younger and I started like really digging into making artwork, I think that my main goal was I'm obsessed with this anime character and I must draw them. And so I don't think I was really thinking about, what do I want to be in the future and is art an option? I think that for a long time, being a full-time artist just seemed so out of reach. And so it probably like barely crossed my mind because I didn't think that was an option. And so I'm also someone who really lives in the present. I don't really think that far ahead. So I definitely could never have imagined that I would successfully be a full-time artist. I don't think I really had any other idea of what I was going to be though. How do you keep art fun and don't fall into this toxic productivity mindset? This is definitely something that I've struggled with, and especially in this hustle culture and seeing lots of artists who are younger than me and more successful than me on social media. And, you know, comparison is definitely a big part of this problem, and it's really hard to avoid. I am constantly preaching about not comparing yourself to other artists, and something that I try to remind myself of is that being within the art community, it's not a competition, it's not a race. Everyone's going at their own pace, and there is room for everyone. Every artist and creator has their own unique voice, and I try to remind myself of why I chose to be an artist in the first place and why I enjoy making art. So yeah, it's definitely tough to battle these intrusive thoughts of that I'm not good enough, I'm not working hard enough, I'm not nearly as successful as this person or whatever it is. But ultimately, you know, life is not all about being the best. And that is something that I'm continuing to try and remind myself of. How do you balance staying true to yourself and being quote unquote relevant as an artist on the internet? This is definitely very similar to the previous question, and I have kind of similar thoughts about it. So that's why I put them together here. So yeah, very, very on topic for me right now. I've been really struggling with the state of my presence on the internet lately. And so when I think about my early days on my YouTube channel, I remembered going into it thinking, okay, people are going to want product reviews and tutorials. That was what I assumed is what people wanted and what would do well. And so that's what I originally set out to do. But over time, I realized that tutorials really did not interest me. And I found that I had way more fun with videos that somehow incorporated my own personality and my interests. And so I pivoted my approach. And so now I have kind of a mix of things. I like to, you know, do the screen cap redraws. I like doing these Q&A videos. I still show you the process of my artwork, but I'm also injecting a different kind of sense of personality, I guess, or bringing in me as a person, as opposed to just talking about this is the color I'm using here and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm someone who really enjoys variety. I think that's why I'm a person who uses multiple different types of art mediums, because that's the type of person that I am. And another thing that I think is topical is for a long time, I really refrained from doing short form videos like TikToks, Reels, and Shorts because I just thought it was such a chore, but I knew that, or I assumed it was like the thing to stay relevant. And so I'm navigating ways to make this type of content, but still engaging for me so that I'm actually encouraged to do it as opposed to thinking that I have to do it and it, again, feeling like a chore. And so the way that I've been approaching it and trying to go at it is incorporating other things that I'm interested in, like clothes or fan art, K-pop, lifestyle, etc., and just leaning into what makes me excited. And that way it stays fun as opposed to it feeling like it's just for the sake of doing it. And I think in doing this, in leaning into my interests, it also engages my audience and creates a better sense of community. Because if I'm posting about this K-pop idol or whatever, people in the comments can be like, oh my God, I love this person, or I love that thing that you're posting about. And so that creates conversation, and it just creates another way to connect with your audience. And I think that community is such a huge part of the joy of being on social media. So yeah, that's just kind of my mindset right now and what I'm trying to remind myself of. Can you go over your experience with client projects and tips on portfolios for illustrators that were graphic design students? So for those of you who might not know, I actually went to school for graphic design, and I'm now a illustrator / artist, content creator. So client projects is actually not something that I have a ton of experience with. And so I don't think I'm the best person to provide advice on that. I would say that Furry Little Peach might be a perfect person to look into, because she's somebody who is both an illustrator and designer, but has also worked with a lot of bigger clients. I think she has a couple of videos tackling this type of topic. But in terms of tips on portfolios for illustrators, I would say the most important thing to me, in my opinion, is to provide work that you're interested in making, because that way you attract people who will actually give you projects that will interest you, if that makes sense. But also definitely show variety. I think that's important too, because clients want to see that you're versatile and that you can adapt to a variety of different types of projects. So yeah, that would be my advice. Not that I'm the most authoritative person for this subject, since I don't do that type of work. What is an art goal you had that you feel you've achieved? You get to brag a little. Thank you. Honestly, I think just like being a full-time artist is the goal that I have achieved, because I was working part-time retail for a really, really long time after I finished school, because I just wasn't able to sustain myself with my art financially for a while. And so becoming a full-time artist, and I have now been a full-time artist for over 2 years-ish. So that is definitely an achievement that I'm really proud of. How do you balance work / art life with your personal life away from art? This one is definitely something that I had been really struggling with, especially kind of the first year of being a full-time artist. I was very, very like hustle. I think that now I've gotten better at separating the two or having a balance. I, for the most part, try and not work in the evenings. So I don't work exactly 9 to 5, but I try to basically, I think after dinner, I stop working usually, unless I have like a really pressing deadline. And then I generally don't work on the weekends as well. And the reason why I structured my life like this, even though I don't have to, I technically could make up my own schedule, is that a lot of my friends do work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So when I'm planning, to hang out with people, it just makes more sense for me to structure my life in a similar manner. Not exactly, but that's kind of how I do it, because it is really important to give yourself time to live life and take a break. Favorite career moments so far? I have a few. I think that the first thing is when people do fan art for me, whether it is of like characters that I've created or fan art of me specifically. I just find that to be so special, because, making art requires a lot of time and effort. And so the idea that someone is choosing to spend that time in their art supplies and their energy into making something for me is just so wild and endearing. And it's just like, my heart just explodes when I get fan art. And then the other thing is being recognized in person. That has been quite wild. That's something that I never ever would have expected for the trajectory of my life. I really don't see myself as like an influencer or a celebrity of any kind, but technically I am in that scope since I am on the internet. But yeah, I've been recognized a couple of times at concerts. So that's been pretty wild. So now moving into life/miscellaneous questions. The first ones I have here are about my Japan trip. So how was Japan? I'm excited to see your travel vlog. Yeah, Japan was amazing. It's been on my #1 destination list for a very long time. And so it was really incredible to finally be able to go. And I had an amazing time. It lived up to pretty much every expectation I had for it. Favorite food you had in Japan? Lots of yummy food. I think the standout for me that felt like the most visceral was last minute, kind of on a whim, we went to this 24-hour sushi restaurant, and it was like one of the few things that were open. We had like just checked into our hostel and we were like, we just need food. We're tired. A lot of things are closed. And so my expectations were not very high, especially for something that's 24 hours. But that first bite of, I think it was either a salmon or a tuna. I think it was a salmon sushi. Oh my God. It was so good. So yeah, that was like the highlight, I think. Welcome back. What was your favorite part of your trip to Japan? Oh, it's impossible to pick one thing. I do, like I said, I love the convenience stores, love all the vending machines, love how clean it is. Everyone's so respectful and polite. I also love that there are bathrooms everywhere, and the toilets are like next level. Yeah, it's amazing. I am so prepared to go back ASAP. What is one part of the Japanese language that was difficult to wrap your head around as a native English speaker? So I've mentioned this a few times. I have been doing Japanese on Duolingo, which is a language learning app. I'm definitely not great at like retaining anything, but I would say that the most difficult thing with Japanese is the structure of the sentences is different from the way that we structure a English sentence. So I think that's probably the most difficult, as well as the fact that there is hiragana and kanji. So that's also really difficult, as opposed to it being like a phonetic language. Where have you traveled to in the world / where would you want to travel? So as I said, Japan was the #1 destination for me for a long time, and I have now gone. So that's checked off the list. Although I will say I want to go back already so bad. I have also been to Vietnam. I've been to a number of places in the United States. I went to Florida for Disney. I went to Los Angeles. I've been to New York. And I've been to Austin. And then for Canada, surprisingly, I actually haven't been to many places. I've pretty much just been like in Southern Ontario and then popped over to Montreal, basically. I do have plans to go to Vancouver, or like BC, British Columbia. So I'm looking forward to that. And then in terms of places that I want to go, I have heard really good things about Singapore. I think that'd be really cool. I've also never been to Europe, so that would be cool. I don't have anywhere specifically in Europe yet in mind. That would be like way in the future, but I would like to go at some point, especially as someone who is into art museums, I think. And I think that would be, definitely the place to go for that. What is your favorite snack / meal lately? I think sandwiches? I don't know why. Maybe because we're kind of entering springtime and like slightly warmer weather. So I find that sandwiches feel slightly more fresh, I guess. So that's kind of been something that I've been quite enjoying, as well as smoothies. I'm literally having a smoothie right now while I'm doing this voiceover. Again, I think it's the spring vibes. What's your favorite and least favorite fashion trend? Ooh, this is a fun question. There is a lot of them. I can never seem to pick one thing. So I will say that I think one of the main, or the thing that like first comes to mind, is high-waisted bottoms. I am a big, strong, firm believer of a high-waisted bottom, whether it's a skirt or pants, whichever. I just think it's very flattering, and I will die on that hill. And then also, this is a more specific current trend that I'm really into right now, is corset tops. I know that might be controversial. I know some people are not a fan of corset tops because they feel like we're taking steps back, but I would say corset tops that are actually fitted to you, not where you're like suffocating and you're gonna faint. I'm not a fan of that specifically. I just think that a corset top looks so satisfying because it's so structured and has this like touch of luxury. But I think it's really cool that people have been pairing corsets with casual wear. So if you do, you know, like you have a corset top, but then you have like a dress shirt underneath it, or you're wearing like baggy jeans or something. I just think that the juxtaposition of something that is so formal looking with something more casual. I don't know. I'm a big fan of a corset top. And then least favorite fashion trend is for sure low rise pants, low rise, like super micro low rise skirts where like, you know, the hips are jutting out. I just think that one, it makes your torso look weirdly long and then your legs really short, whereas a high-waisted bottom will make your legs look longer. And while we're on the topic of fashion, the next question is best fashion and least favorite fashion tip. So I don't know if this is necessarily the best fashion tip, but it's definitely a fashion tip that I personally keep in mind a lot of the times, is if you are planning to do something oversized or really baggy, I think it's important to balance it with something that's also fitted, as opposed to doing everything baggy. Again, this is just my own personal preference. I'm sure tons of people can rock a super oversized everything, but I find that when everything is oversized, I just look like a potato. And then least favorite fashion tip, I would say I'm not a fan of when people consider, you know, certain colors off limits for certain skin tones or hair colors, you know, when like there's some like arbitrary limitations, like rules in that sense. I don't think that, you know, just because you have a cool undertone in your skin complexion that you can only wear these types of colors or whatever. I think that ultimately, if you really like the thing and you feel good in it, then just go for it. That's my, any like hard fashion rules, I'm like, nah, if you feel good in it, then you should do it. Will you marry me? I promise to take you out for sushi art dates every week. I love that I got a marriage proposal, y'all, and you are all witnesses and you're all guests invited to the wedding. Just kidding. But honestly, sushi art dates every week, that sounds amazing. Whoever you marry is a very lucky person. But unfortunately, I don't think I am equipped to be married at this moment in time. What's something you really enjoy that you don't think many people know about? I really like singing. I know some people probably know that, especially my friends. But yeah, I'm don't get me wrong, I'm not a good singer, but I find singing really, really fun. So for the past number of years for my birthday, I've done karaoke, and it's just so much fun. And moving on to the fandom questions, we have, which remake are you more excited about, Barbie or The Little Mermaid? I'm really excited for the Barbie movie. I have no idea what to expect from it. I've just seen the teaser photos and things. I hope that it's fun. That's what I hope for. And the casting and sets and costumes and stuff, it looks like they really did their research on like the history of Barbie. So it looks really interesting. As for The Little Mermaid, I have nothing against the casting of Halle. I think that she's beautiful, and I actually loved the Chloe x Halle album Ungodly Hour. Like I am a fan of her. I have no idea what her acting skills look like, but I'm just not a big Disney live action remake person. I've seen a couple of them and I'm just like, meh. I'd rather just watch the original animated version. I'm very partial to those. I grew up with them. I am a big believer of the animated musical genre, and I just don't see why we're doing live action remake versions other than making money. So yeah. What's your favorite movie musical, and also what are your favorite songs from that movie? So if we exclude animated films, because then this would be a whole different question, I would say Moulin Rouge. I absolutely adore that movie. And I think my favorite song from it is probably Elephant Love Medley. It's so fun. The mashup of all the different songs are so catchy, and I had a humongous crush on Ian McGregor when that movie came out. So yeah, I may or may not go see it on Broadway. I would love to if I can. So, because I am going to New York in a couple months or in a month from now. So yeah, anyway, love Moulin Rouge. Did you catch the RuPaul's Drag Race season 15 finale? So I unfortunately have a bad confession to make. I did not watch the newest season. I watched the Pit Stop, which is a recap, like an official recap YouTube series, which was hosted by Bianca Del Rio. And the guests were phenomenal, and Bianca is so funny, and that's how I actually consumed the show. I didn't actually watch the show. I just watched it through this recap series. So unfortunately, I feel bad about it, but we all only have so much time in the day. So, but I might catch All Stars, maybe. Do you have any favorite tropes / genres in the TV shows and movies you like to watch? I'd like to think that I'm pretty open to a lot of different genres. I feel like I consume a lot of different things, but I do think that the majority of what I consume, or at least the things that I find myself really gravitating towards, is things that are fantasy or magic based with like interesting world building elements. I think that for me, when I consume content, I really do see it as a form of escapism for the most part. And so when something is very fantastical and otherworldly, I think that really solidifies my feeling of escapism, because it's so far removed from my own universe and my own world and my own life. And then when it comes to tropes, I think that with like character dynamics, I was like really thinking hard about this. And when you think of tropes, I think we always think of romantic tropes. I think that seems to be like the thing that comes to mind most of the time. But then I realized when I was thinking about the series that really I feel so invested in, or the types of character dynamics that I feel really invested in, I realized that found family is something that I really, really love and resonates with me. So I think that is my favorite trope. Think of Haikyuu, that's definitely a found family vibe. Skate the Infinity, which is something I always recommend to people when they tell me that they really like Haikyuu. Haikyuu is a volleyball anime / manga. And then Skate the Infinity is a skateboarding one. Both of them, while technically sports series, it definitely is more centered around the actual characters and their growth and development as, like, you know, a coming of age, but also a found family dynamic. Another one that is a bit newer for me is Six of Crows. I have been watching the Shadow and Bone TV series, and I just got the audiobooks for the Six of Crows duology. I just started it, so I actually haven't really dug into the novels just yet, but Six of Crows was definitely my favorite part of the Shadow and Bone series, so I think that I will really enjoy that. And again, it does have a bit of a found family vibe to the cast of characters. And so that being said, Avatar: The Last Airbender has both the fantasy world building element genre and also found family. So that is clearly the superior TV show for my personal preferences. Speaking of which, how do you feel about the new Avatar Kyoshi series coming out? So I am extremely excited about any of the new animated Avatar related stuff. I actually haven't dug in too much about the news. I have heard about it, and I know that Avatar Kyoshi is a queer character and has like a whole graphic novel series around her. So I'm very excited to see that on screen. And then I do believe someone had asked me about how I felt about the live action Avatar coming out. I am pretty neutral on it at this point because I think that for me, I'm just way more excited about all the animated stuff, especially knowing that the original creators have left the live action project. So maybe I'll check it out out of curiosity, but I don't really have a lot of high hopes for it. If you could have any quirk, example My Hero Academia, what would it be? Definitely teleportation. That is always my go-to superpower because I hate commuting and I love to travel. So being able to teleport would be incredible. What are your thoughts on modern cartoons? I mean, I think it's pretty safe to say that I'm a big fan of animation, but I think in terms of modern cartoons, if we're thinking about Western animation made for adults, I don't know what the exact definition for modern cartoons would be, but if we're going outside of the realm of anime, there are things like BoJack Horseman, there's Love, Death and Robots, there's Owl House. You know, I think that animation is a medium that is often overlooked because people seem to still assume that animation is always for children, but that's not the case. I think that while yes, there are animation in cartoons that are geared towards children and only appeal to children, there's such a wide variety of genres out there, and animation is just a medium. It's a tool. It's a way to storytell. And so I think that it is amazing, and I am a big, big fan. If anime characters were real, who would be in your friend group? I had to really think hard about this question because there are a lot of characters that I love, but when you actually think about being their friend or the, real life tangible scenarios, I'm like, I don't know about that. So my list is the trio from Jujutsu Kaisen, so Itadori, Megumi, and Nobara. I think that Itadori is just the sweetest being, and I think that he would be such a reliable but fun friend. Megumi, you always need someone who's going to ground you and be a voice of reason, so I think he's very important to have in a friend group. And Nobara, because she and I would go shopping, but she's also a bad bitch, so I need that kind of energy in my life to aspire to. So they're just a perfect balance. And then I also have Hikaru and Karu, the twins from Ouran High School Host Club, because they just seem like they would be so fun and entertaining. And then also, I didn't put down a specific character, but I would love to be part of the Sailor Moon friend group. They just emulate so much of what I want in my life, basically just girl power and friendship. And so I think it's really funny that I say this because apparently where the creator came up with this concept for Sailor Moon is that she created these group of girls that she wanted to be friends with. So it's kind of perfect and it makes a lot of sense. What is your favorite show/movie right now? I absolutely loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. I've talked about this movie in my Patreon podcast and I just loved it. I'm so happy for all of the accolades that it has received and the story that they told. But also, again, I love all the fantasy kind of sci-fi elements of it. And it was just, it really hit home as a person, as an Asian person who has an immigrant mother. And yeah, also the cinematography was incredible. So yeah, that's definitely favorite film. I also really want to see the new John Wick film purely for Rina Sawayama. I love her. For TV shows, I really wanted to love the second season of Shadow and Bone. I for sure assumed that it was going to be in my monthly favorites, but unfortunately I didn't love it the way that I had hoped. Like I mentioned earlier, the Six of Crows is definitely the highlight for me. I found that the Shadow and Bone, like Alina story, really just didn't engage me, and I felt like almost no investment in that storyline at all, which is, you know, half the story. So, alas. What's an anime you've been wanting to watch but have been putting off? One Piece. That is a series that I have managed to not watch at all of this time. And it's still going from my knowledge. And for a long time, the reason why I never got into One Piece was because I wasn't attracted to the art style. I'm a very visual person. And so if the art style is not something that is really up my alley aesthetically, then I will usually avoid it. But it's been around for a really long time for a reason. And so the curiosity is building for me. I'm like, I kind of want to know what all the hype is about. And also, Jisoo or Jisupi on Instagram, she had started watching this series and she made this hilarious illustration about one of the characters. And I'm not going to lie, this silly little review that she made about this character might be the reason why I finally actually watch One Piece. Anyway, if I do end up starting to watch it, I'm sure I will also make stories about it and talk about it and whatnot. But I gotta admit, I have a really hard time committing to TV shows lately for some reason. Any thoughts on some new anime or anime you've watched recently? So I did try or have been trying to watch Trigun. So I made a poll on Instagram a little while back asking if I should watch the original Trigun first and then watch the Trigun Stampede, which is like the newer version of it, because I know that they're quite different from each other. And so most people said, yes, I should watch the original Trigun. So I started watching it and I don't know, I know that it is like a late 90s, early 2000s series, so they just have a different feel to them. And like, I love Cowboy Bebop, so I assumed that it was going to be kind of in that realm, but it's definitely very different. And I'm finding that it's not really retaining my attention. And so I went ahead and actually started watching Trigun Stampede. I think I'm only an episode or two in, so I can't really tell you how I feel about it just yet. I will say though, I definitely like the character design of the new Trigun, of Vash, the lead character in Stampede, but I definitely prefer a hand-drawn animation style. Like the Trigun Stampede has that really like smooth CGI animation and I'm not a fan, so we'll see. I'm gonna give it a shot because it seems to be quite popular right now and people seem to really like it. So I'm gonna try and stick it out. Maybe I'll go back and forth between the two. I'm not really sure, but we'll see. And then the last little section here is for K-pop/music, because as we know, K-pop has been a huge part of my personality now. So my question here from my friend is, what is your opinion on all 128 anime that Woozy talked about in his 6-hour V Live? So Woozy is a member from the K-pop group 17, and it's pretty infamous that he did a 6-hour live stream talking about anime, which I think is hilarious. I have not seen this live stream, so I just did a quick Google search of all the anime that he had mentioned because someone compiled this list, and I'm actually quite surprised of this list because I'm actually not that familiar with a lot of the series that he'd mentioned. But I think it makes sense when I really think about it because he grew up in Korea, and so Korea probably had a different kind of set of series that was being pushed to them than in North America, which is where I'm from. And I think that a lot of the series that he talks about and has like an affinity for is probably from his youth. And so a lot of them I have never seen before or even heard of. So I thought that was quite interesting. So unfortunately, I don't have a ton of opinions on his list because I'm not as familiar with a lot of the things that he had mentioned. What was your journey with getting into K-pop, and did you ever think it would turn into this big of an interest for you? No, I definitely did not anticipate this. So how it began was at the start of the pandemic, I watched BTS's NPR Tiny Desk concert because I love NPR Tiny Desk concerts, and I was obviously aware of BTS, but I never really checked them out properly. So I watched that and I was like, oh, they're really fun. I like the chemistry, the music is good, and then of course, as it goes, I'm like, who's that? And who's that? And then the rabbit hole just sucks you in. And I originally thought, okay, this is a lot to consume, but if I just stick to BTS and BTS only, then that's manageable. And then my friend was like, hey, I heard you're into BTS. Do you want to go to the 17 concert with me in a few months? And I was like, I'm not familiar with them yet, but I could get into them. I like concerts. And then it just spiraled from there. Now I'm a mega 17 fan, and I've been slipping and falling into all sorts of K-pop holes. So yeah, it's kind of ridiculous how much it has consumed me. But also at the same time, it brings me a lot of joy from not only the music, but also the variety shows. I also have been doing dance now, like casually learning the dance choreo, and I've made new friends and, interacted with total strangers about K-pop because they, saw that I had some kind of K-pop merch on me. So there's just this sense of community and being able to connect with other people over your love of this genre. So all around, just a really good time. How did you discover Extraordinary Heroes? I'm obsessed with them because of you, so thank you. Honestly, I absolutely love it when people tell me that they get into something after hearing me recommend it, whether it's music, TV shows, whatever. That makes me so happy. Extraordinary Heroes is a K-band, I think is what they're called. Anyway, I discovered them because of Stray Kids, which is another group that I love. Stray Kids, Bang Chan, he did a live stream where he reacted to them doing a cover of a Stray Kids song, and then it just sort of spiraled from there. I was like, oh, I should check them out. And then, yeah, so that's how that began. Extraordinary Heroes actually just had a comeback, so check out their new music. Favorite tour? Definitely 17. When I saw them last year, I hope that I can see them again this year. They were absolutely insane. It was so good. And the energy of the crowd too, absolutely incredible. I have lots of footage of it on one of my vlogs, so you can check it out. I also really loved seeing Rina Sawayama. I do actually have tickets to see her again this year. She was amazing. It's like completely different from 17. Like she doesn't have like the same production and sets and stuff, but like she was still so good, and I think that says a lot about her charisma and star power as a performer, that she doesn't need all the glitz and glamour. Like she can still really turn out a show. Best dressed era for 17 and BTS. I think with 17, I know they just had a new comeback, so we'll see, as they roll out all the stuff. But I would say that I really loved their looks in the Ataka era, right? If I'm correct. I really loved the motocross Formula One vibes in the Anyone music video. And I also loved all of the Rock With You aesthetic outfits. Just that edgy outfits with the little rock emo twist on it. I'm obsessed. And then with BTS, I really loved the Wings era, like Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I mean, again, I just love something that feels a little bit edgier in terms of fashion. So that was probably my favorite. But again, they always rock all the looks. All the looks is good. Who's your bias in TXT and why? So TXT is Tomorrow by Together. I was it was a toss-up between Soobin and Yeonjun for quite a while. And I think I've landed on Soobin just because I think that he's so endearing. And he did an interview where he talked about how he saw the Jujutsu Kaisen movie and it brought him to tears. And I was like, that is so, so sweet. So I had no choice but to stan. Are you interested in any new K-pop groups lately? I'm partial to LE SSERAFIM these days. I do like listening to girl groups as well. I just find that I only have so much time in the day, so I don't watch as much like variety shows with girl groups, but I do listen to a lot of girl groups casually. So I also like LE SSERAFIM, I like New Jeans, I like Blackpink, I like Twice. So yeah. I've been diving into ATEEZ a little bit. So ATEEZ is a boy group, so I have been watching a little bit of their variety content. It brings me a lot of joy, so I'm here for it. And then very last question, favorite song as of lately. I have been listening to the new 17 album non-stop. It's literally been on loop. They are killing it. I think my favorites on the album is definitely Super, the title track, and I Don't Understand, But I Love You. I am obsessed. The sentiment and that line, I don't understand, but I love you, it's just so perfect for non-Korean K-pop fans because it just sums up the whole vibe perfectly. And the song came about because during one of their live streams, a person commented that. And I just think that's so sweet that they turned it into an entire song. And with that, that concludes today's video. I hope that you enjoyed seeing the process and having my Q&A keep you company. And I'll have all the links to my Patreon and social media stuff in the description down below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I hope that you have an amazing day or evening wherever you're at. And I'll check you in the next one. Bye.